Right.
Yeah.
So you're running a business from far, huh? It's hard.
Not easy.
Yeah.
Yeah, because Hong Kong, the government internal fighting.
I see.
Yeah, the mindset, two mindset.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
So how does that affect your business daily?
Yeah.
How does that affect you daily, every day?
I do. Yeah, because the history from UK.
Okay.
Yeah, the system, the rule, the law, the account, the finance, everything.
Yeah.
But now the China government and how to arrange, I think very interesting. Yeah.
Okay.
But we will not change because Hong Kong the money city.
Right.
Every money from different place go into Hong Kong.
Right.
And going out to another place.
That's right.
Yeah.
Right. That's it.
When you one day you go to Hong Kong, you can see many the bank, many the money
changes.
Many
okay. Yeah. All right. Baruch Hashem, you're here studying Torah.
Baruch Hashem.
Yeah. And you've gone through some of the paperwork now. You've with the making Aliyah.
Yeah.
You went to the embassy and everything's okay.
Yeah.
It's a process. It takes time. But Zat Hashem, we're getting ready to receive the Torah. Okay? We're getting ready to receive the Torah. Yes, Shavuot, getting ready. We talked about
very important power.
Modern power? What do you mean?
The Torah, the Hashem, the power. Very important.
It gives you power, you're saying? It gives you strength?
Yeah.
Gives you strength? Yeah, amazing. Baruch Hashem. So we're in chapter 13, learning Pnei laws of the festivals, where he talks about the 4 names of Shavuot. Who remembers what they are? I think he started off with, right, Shavuot. He started off with Shavuot. Then we went to, we said that also Chag Matan Torah, not officially, but that's one of the themes of Shavuot. Shavuot, it means weeks. So we count the weeks from Pesach to Shavuot, towards maybe receiving the Torah. And then we said Chag what did you say? Chag HaKatzil, the agricultural harvest of the wheat, and then beginning the harvest of the fruits as well. And then Chag HaBikurim. Why Chag HaBikurim? We said yesterday. What does Chag HaBikurim mean? Which means. So why is Shavuot? Why is called the Chag HaBikurim?
The first harvest that we
No.
When they start bringing first fruit of the 7 species. No?
That's right. The first fruits of the 7 species they start to ripen during the summer from Shavuot and on. But there's something specific about the day of Shavuot as well that we bring some first fruits. We mentioned it before. There's that's right. There is an offering from the first fruit. So Chag HaKatzil is in general. It's not.
Is the wheat harvest, no?
It's the harvest, but it also the barley and the wheat. So sort of like the. But the first offering from the wheat is on Shavuot. So that's why one reason it's called Bikurim, but also because it's the beginning of the season of Bikurim for the other fruits during the summer.
What's the name of the offering?
Shtei halechem. It's actually the two breads. Shtei halechem. That's the name. Teruma is something we have to separate from our produce to give to the Kohanim. It doesn't have to go to the Beit HaMikdash. No, it's not a korban. It's not. That's something else. It's not the same. No. And what's the korban of course, the second day, the first day of Pesach? There was not Shtei Halechem, but there was the korban. Korban Pesach was the day before Pesach. David, come on, help us, be with us. The day, what's the korban on the first day of Pesach? No.
The barley offering.
Right, what's it called? Oh, the Omer offering. All right. We do Sfirat HaOmer. Till now, how many days today?
It's 45.
45 days to the Omer. 45 days. Wow. With 4 more nights. Wow. Exciting. Till 49. We don't count the 50th. The 50th is already Shavuot. That's right. We celebrate. Tov. So we're about page 227, section 6. One more name of the holiday that's actually used by the Torah. Atseret. And it's actually used in rabbinic literature, as we can see here. Start us off, David. Number 6, page 227.
Atseret. In rabbinic literature, the festival of Shavuot is called Atseret. At first glance, this is surprising. The Torah refers to the last day of Pesach as Atseret, and refers to the day following the 7 days of Sukkot as Shemini Atzeret. Why did the sages chose to ignore biblical precedents and refer to Shavuot as Atzeret? Let us explore the meaning of the word Atzeret. The word Atzeret is related to the Atzara, stopping. And
what does it say on when you go in the streets? You see this red sign, an octagon usually, right? 8 sides. In English, it's stop. In Hebrew, atzor. So the word atzeret comes from atzor. Yeah, so stopping. Go ahead.
And also in the bus.
That's right. When you press the bus, the button in the bus, it says it's going to. Sometimes it says otzer. It's not a mistake. It's meaning that the bus is stopping. Stopping. That's right. Right.
And Atzeret is a time when many people refrain.
That is.
From doing other things and gather together to celebrate. Then they internalize and absorb the message that the celebration is meant to convey. This helps us to understand why, at the conclusion of Pesach and Sukkot, the Torah prescribes an additional Yom Tov. It is meant as a meaningful send-off for all the pilgrims celebrating near the temple, and help them internalize and hold on to their experiences during the holy festival.
Let me tell you, there's one other meaning of the word atzeret, la'atzor, and that is we use the same word for collecting, because you stop it from scattering. So, for example, if you want to, in modern Hebrew as well, when you want to make an art exhibit, there's an otzer. Actually, that's I think with an aleph, but with an ayin, there's la'atzor means to, like when you make preserves, you can use the same word. So you collect all the olives, for example, and put them in juice and or pickles, and make pickles, cucumbers, and make them pickle and turn them into pickles. So this process is sometimes called la'atzor. So it's sort of like it keeps all the flavor inside, keeps all the juice inside. Same thing he's saying here. The whole experience of the festival, the previous festival, which is Sukkot or Pesach, is going to be concentrated by being collected and turning into some meaningful message in that last day of Atseret. Okay, go ahead. Last line. Even if one missed out.
Wait, this helps us understand why the Torah prescribes additional Yom Tov. It is meant as a meaningful send-off for all the pilgrims celebrating in the temple. It helped them internalize and hold on to their experiences during the whole festival. Even if one missed out on going to Jerusalem, he was required to stop working on the final day of Yom Tov. He needed to internalize all of his spiritual accomplishments and the joy he experienced during the festival, which would then strengthen and elevate him during all the upcoming weekdays. There was no greater Atzeret in world history than the revelation at Sinai, when all Jews united to accept the Torah. Thus we read, Israel encamped by Yichan in the singular. They're in front of the mountain. That's Shemot 19:2. There's one person with one heart.
This is what perhaps one of the most famous Rashis. Rashi sort of asks the question, sort of hints to the question. Why does it say in singular? Vayichan Sham Yisrael neged ahar, that the Jewish people encamped opposite the mountain, it should have said Vayachanu, that they camped in plural. It says Vayichan. What does Rashi interpret? Because they were like one, as one person with one heart. Ki'ish echad belev echad. So Vayichan is actually, I don't know if they're having it this year. They had last year, during Corona, they had a very big gathering on Zoom of all of rabbis from a great number of yeshivot, different kinds, Haredim, Tzionim Datiyim, and many different types, the different Hasidim, great rabbis of all kinds. They all got together to have this sort of convention, pre-Shavuot learning, and there must have been 100 shiurim or more in this Zoom conference. What did they call it? Vayichan. Hinting to this drasha that all of the Torah scholars are supposed to know, that Vayichan refers to what Rashi said, as one person with one heart. It's the word which sort of symbolizes for us unity, that we have to all be together, the Jewish people all together. So that was they named the conference Vayichan. Yeah, nice, it's sweet. You have to be on the inside though to know, right? As it's, if you just think about it. And they camped. It's not a very catchy title. And they camped, right? But if you just say camp, just say camping, I don't know. But as it's stated, it's obviously a quote from the Pasuk about Matan Torah, about Shavuot, and it's in the introduction, the beginning of chapter 19, where the whole revelation is described. It's the second verse, as you can see here, 19:2. It says, and the Jewish people encamped there in front of the mountain as one person with one heart, is what Rashi explains. Okay, go ahead, David.
Yes, all the other encampments are recorded in the plural, as in every community there are always arguments and disagreements. Only then and there, facing the mountain with the intention of accepting the Torah, we are all united. This is the meaning of Rabbi Akiva's statement: love your fellow as you love yourself. Starting from about 12:18. Is a vital principle of the Torah. It is through the Torah that love and unity are revealed among Jews, and it is through unity that the Torah is revealed. It was not only the Jews of the generation who were present at Sinai and said the Torah, but the souls of all Jews of all time, including those of all future converts. Acceptance of the Torah finally put an end to the defilement which had adhered to them as a result of the sin of Dan Father.
Have you heard of that Midrash before?
With all the souls were gathering at the...
So there's a few. The one that all the souls there? Yes.
Where can one find it?
Oh, okay. I'll have to look for you.
Okay.
I think it's in the Gemara. It could be over there in Shabbat 146. Hey, well, but that's why it says in many places the sources speak about Ger Hamitgayer. This is a convert who converts. Well, if he's a convert, he doesn't need to convert. It should say a person who converts. Well, I could say a convert who converts. And they say, well, everybody who converts probably stems from a soul who was at Sinai. And so he's already a Jewish soul, and he just needs to formalize it, to put it into practice. In any case, this comes from this idea that all the Jews, for all generations, even the souls of converts were there at Sinai, but the second Midrash which he quotes about that there was a defilement. You might have heard this. It's similar to the idea of Gilgul is particular reincarnation. That's not so heavily emphasized in Judaism. That's when you have the same soul coming back a number of times in different bodies. This is not what we're talking about. We're just saying maybe the soul was there and it's only its first time. It's only one time does it come into this world. Not necessarily connected to the fact that it's been through many other series of lives. But it says it's not the same. But the second Midrash is about a certain defilement. There's a Midrash, I want you not to get confused with the idea of the fall. You might have heard of the fall. It's a Christian concept. It says that essentially man is damned. Right? Man is damned to eternal damnation, to hell. Why? Because the first Adam sinned. That's it. You're lost forever. This is a Christian idea. And the only way to save yourself, according to Christianity, is to believe in Jesus. Anybody who doesn't, you don't have to do anything else, but just believe in Jesus and you'll be saved, because otherwise you cannot be saved. That is the status of man that is eternally damned. So we don't believe that, of course. But what I want to share with you is this, another idea, which is in some ways similar. That's why I'm comparing it to you. And that is that when Adam sinned, and Chava in particular sinned with the snake, somehow they got tainted, they got dirtied, sullied by some kind of spiritual zuhama, it's called in Hebrew, some kind of spiritual filth. And their souls, the souls of humanity, was essentially, sounds similar, right? The souls of humanity were dirty. Our sages tell us until the revelation at Sinai. When the Jewish people accepted revelation at Sinai, they were cleansed from any of their former sins, or any other filth, or any spiritual impurity. So this is what he's referring to here. Acceptance of the Torah finally put an end to the defilement which adhered to them as a result of the sin of Adam and Chava. So there is this concept. It's not the same, and what it means is just to be Jewish. You don't have to believe in anything or do anything. But the very fact that the Jewish people accepted the Torah, essentially what's saying is that the hope of for humanity getting back on track is the Torah that God gave us at Sinai. Okay, it's not that we don't believe that man is essentially evil or bad from the moment he's born. That of course he has a Yetzer Hara, but he also has a Yetzer Tov. Essentially, babies are very cute, no, innocent. Leah. I don't think Leah is she's so cute. And as we know, she was born as a Jew, so she doesn't have any of this defilement, which we, all the Jewish people, received at Sinai. We got cleansed of it, Sinai. Yeah. You wanted to ask something, and then I'll take it.
So you said that the Adam Rishon and the hit that he did is why the Christians have this notion.
It's called the original sin in Christianity.
If you do not like the Yeshki man, you are going to hell. Why did the Goyim fabricate this nonsensical notion? Are they ignorant? Are they that ignorant of Torah? Where do they get this? Where do they get this from?
The Torah can be interpreted in many ways, and you ask them where they got this idea for. This is not a class on Christian theology. There is a similar concept that the Midrash that he just mentioned, so I'm explaining it using that more absolute sort of status. That's the way Christianity takes it, whereas in Judaism it's not like that at all. It's sure, sin causes spiritual impurity, but then when the Torah was given, we were cleansed of that. Okay, Renat?
What is referring this cleansing, like this
Cleansing, yeah.
Yeah, that he was like canceled, not canceled.
Cleansed.
The first thing, Rishon.
Yeah.
But it's only for the group of Jewish people, not for all over the world.
That's an interesting point, right?
Right?
That's right.
So if the other nations want to be cleansed also, they need to become Jewish.
So it's interesting, that the end. What's the end game of, according to traditional Judaism, there's a machloket, believe it or not. In the end of days, is the entire world going to convert and be Jewish, or are they going to remain non-Jews, but just the 7 mitzvot of Noach? We've discussed this before. The Noachites, and maybe they'll accept God as the God, but they don't have to join the covenant. Only the Jewish people of the 613 mitzvot. Everybody else, they still have a relationship with God, but it's on a more basic level. And that's represented by the 7 versus the 613 mitzvot. But in terms of this Midrash, you make a good point. It sounds like that they're never cleansed until they become Jewish. They're never really cleansed of this original defilement.
It's like put an end to the defilement.
Right.
So it's put an end to the defilement in the Jewish people.
That's the simple reading. Yeah, I like your idea, though. Maybe the very fact that the Jewish people accepted the Torah releases all of humanity from that original sin. The very fact that there's Torah in the world for the Jewish people has an effect, a ripple effect, on the entire world. It's possible. It's an interesting interpretation. But
for sure, but actually,
does it remove the defilement? Well, we don't know what we're talking about really. What is the spiritual defilement? What does that mean? What is that? It's not like it doesn't mean internal damnation. Like no, not at all. It just means that there's, the way I read it is that there's a certain level of closeness to God which you can achieve, and the world was far away from God until the revelation at Sinai. This was a major event.
It's more
propensity. Maybe?
Yeah, propensity to the Yitzhara.
Could be, right?
And there is, before it was like Chetzi, like before the scene of the Machon, and
right.
after was like a more...
A leaning towards, Maybe. It's open to interpretation. We don't have an exact, specific definition of exactly what this defilement was and what it means. It doesn't mean that automatically man is going to burn, but there is a concept that a certain effect of the original sin, as it's called, a certain effect of that remained until maybe the entire world was cleansed of it when God made up again with humanity through revealing Himself at Sinai. What that showed is that, there's also, we mentioned yesterday, that what's the metaphor for Shavuot? What did we talk about yesterday? The metaphor for the holiday. And Sinai, we said God held the mountain over their heads like what is it? Like a chuppah. We said that it's a romantic element, that there's like joining. There's a threat. There's an element of threat in there, but also we said that it represents, of course, coming together. What is a marriage? It's a union of two people that were separate, that were distinct from each other. Now they're creating a union, a unity. We just spoke about now the Jewish people were as one, in order so that unity can then be expressed with God. So
what for me doesn't make sense is why God did that. Why he needed to do that?
Okay, why the threat? Why did?
No. Why they did like for the Jewish people everything from the start?
That's a good question. Why did He choose the Jewish people? Right? Why
choose this way? Not the Jewish people itself, but why He chose this way to do a covenant with one nation and then bring the redemption to the world like this nation.
Right.
Why?
I'll try to relate to that. It's a very good question. Of course, we've spoken about it before. We'll talk about it again. But I also wanted to say that, just before I forget, the reason why I brought this up again is because, in a way, you can also say that the revelation at Sinai, it was like a wedding, but it's also a little bit like the wedding in Gan Eden, going back to the creation of the world. It's recreating, it's a new beginning. just like Adam and Chava got married when they were created. So there's an element here of returning back, right? For fixing being at the revelation is like fixing of that original sin where there was distance between man and God. Here we have man and God coming close again. You've seen the was it Michelangelo? The picture? It's like God reaching down with his finger. Are they touching? Are they touching?
Yeah.
So actually, they discovered
There's a little dot between.
the way it is now. The way it is, there's a space. The way it is now, but apparently they did some like scientific analysis, and they uncovered in earlier renditions. He actually painted it at first when they were touching, and then he changed his mind. Why? Listen, it's a representation. Obviously, we don't bow down to it. Nothing's about a zara unless you bow down to it, unless you treat it as a god. We don't treat it as God.
God is the man. That's
We don't do that. It's too similar to anthropomorphism. We're very careful. The Rambam writes many times how don't think that God has a finger. Don't think that God, because it says that they saw his hand, his strong arm in Egypt. Don't think that God has an arm. He doesn't have a body. That's been pretty much standard Jewish theology for a long time, for 800 years at least. It didn't start with the Rambam, but it's been. We're very much against anthropomorphism now. But so I can see your feeling. How can you draw God as an old man with a white beard, with a hand reaching out?
Mom was telling me, even though we were so deep, she said we do not make depiction of God.
Yeah, that's right. It runs very deep, but I don't think it's actually prohibited as if you're just using it to show something, to give over a message. That message is showing that, right? God, like we're describing now, God. It says in Shemot 19 that God came down onto the mountain. It says God came down onto the mountain. What does that mean?
And Moshe sees his back.
And later on, it says that Moshe sees his back. What does that mean? So we use that as a metaphor for God's closeness, God becoming close. And what we're describing now is that maybe when man sinned in Gan Eden, God moved away. What does that mean? Spiritual defilement. I mean, God can't be. Doesn't want to be near defilement. So it's the opposite of closeness to God. That's the simple explanation of this. But of course, we're using different metaphors. So when the God comes and reveals himself at Sinai, this puts an end to the defilement, which was part of the human condition until this great revelation at Sinai. Okay, so that's now regarding your question, Renan, about God's choosing the Jewish people. That's a good question.
Not Jewish people. I mean,
Any people.
This way.
Any people,
Yeah,
right. So you studied Kuzari a little bit, right?
We studied, but I didn't
Participate too much. You didn't. So there's a description there. But in general, you look at the the book of Bereshit. It talks a lot about. It doesn't start with Parshat Lech Lecha. It doesn't start with Abraham. Why? The Torah could have just started and say, well, listen, the Torah is given to the Jewish people. The first Jew is Abraham. What do we need all this stuff beforehand? One way to explain it is that the way it's described, the stories, the beginning of Bereshit, right? We have Noach, but our sages tell us there's 10 generations between Adam and Noach, and then another 10 generations between Noach and Abraham. 10 represents, of course, something complete, a complete series or some kind of a pattern. And it sounds like it's described like this in many books. God wanted to have a relationship with man, humanity. That's why he created humanity. And to make a long story short, Adam didn't live up to his expectations. After 10 generations, Hashem says, I'm going to start from scratch. I'm going to wipe out the world, make the flood, right? And I see that the way the world was going, it's not working the right way. It's not succeeding. My plan at being imminent, it's a fancy English word for being involved and present inside the world as opposed to transcendent. There's two words. Transcendent means being above and separate from the world. God is both, we believe. And so God wanted to be more imminent. Boker Tov. Shakoyach. Shakoyach Gadol. Amazing. Okay, thanks.
Special thing coming tomorrow. Sleep well tonight.
Make sure, that's right. We're having a special learning session together, all the groups in the English department. It'll be on the board, but like we did a few weeks ago. This time it won't be cameras and interviews. It'll just be learning, chavruta learning, and it'll be nice. So getting back to Noach, so God says, "Okay, I'll try again," and He saves Noach and his 3 sons, and they go into the ark, and the rest of the world gets destroyed, and then we start a new civilization. Once again, He tries again, very quickly, in a similar way. Noach sins, right? He gets drunk, and then, one thing leads to the other, until after 10 generations, it sounds like God changes His mind, and He says, I see this is not working with the entire population of the world. What I'm going to do is change my tactics. And now, if I want to create my presence in the world, if I want civilization to succeed, I'm going to use a different method. The method is going to be choosing one nation, choosing one person, Avraham, and Avraham will be charged to make a great nation. And that nation, right here in Shemot Yud Tet and the chapter beforehand, God comes to this nation. Obviously, it took a good few hundred years, from Avraham all the way till the Jewish people coming out of Egypt in the Exodus. Ultimately, when the Jewish people is finally formed, God comes to them and says, here's the deal. Atem tihiyu li mamlechet kohanim v'goy kadosh. You will be for me a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. What's a priest? What's a Kohen? What does he do?
He works in the institution as sort of a medium
between who and who?
Us and Hashem.
Us and Hashem, and who's us? What do you mean us?
Am Yisrael.
Am Yisrael, right? So a Kohen is a representative of, he's a small part of the Jewish people, right? Wait a minute. I just said that God came to the Jewish people and said to them, you are going to be Mamlechet Kohanim.
So
an entire kingdom of priests.
we are leading the way. We show the nations how it's supposed
So
to be.
we're priests for the rest of the world.
As a nation. Yes.
As a nation.
Yeah.
Exactly. So Hashem said, with this interpretation I'm trying to develop now, is that perhaps Hashem chose, he said, we're not going to be able to have all of the world have that same level of relationship, not at first anyways, but the method I'm going to use is going to take one nation, make them the priests, have that special relationship with them, have a special covenant with them. They will be able to express godliness in the world, and build a Mishkan and a Mikdash, and they themselves will have their own Kohanim, but the entire Jewish nation will be a holy nation, Goy Kadosh, a holy nation. And then, ultimately, the priest is not for himself, the priest is on behalf of the entire world. So all of humanity will learn, will be connected to God through the Jewish people. So this is one interpretation of trying to understand what God's doing here with the giving the Torah only to the Jews. Why doesn't He give the Torah to everybody? If He wants to remove the defilement from Adam and Chava, that's universal. We see that God chose one nation, and the way I was describing it is this sort of like a process of I wouldn't say God's giving up, but God is sort of refining. At first He tried to, just have Adam and all of his descendants. Didn't work. Noach and all his descendants. It's not working. So he chose a different method. I'm going to focus on one nation for the sake of the entire world, but focus on one nation, and with them create this kingdom of priests and a holy nation. And then at the end of the day, ultimately,
It didn't work very well.
I don't know if it didn't work very well. Here we are.
No, yeah,
Here we are. It's been 3,000 years
because of him.
because of him. We
Why?
have to. It takes two to tango. They say. You have to. We have to fulfill our part, and it's.
Like, let's say the first temple, like all that generation, like it's not all, but many people did.
So the way we look at it is that it's a process. It's like when you want to become a muscle man. You want to become a really bodybuilder. So what do? You first day in the gym, you go in, you try to lift up 300 pounds. You can't. It's impossible, right? So then you start off with 10 pounds, then 20 pounds, then 30 pounds, then you get stronger and stronger, and eventually your muscles grow and grow and grow. It's a process. It's a process. So the same thing with the Jewish people. First temple, second temple, and Bezrat Hashem soon the third temple, and the final temple. But it's a process. It's not like, it didn't work at all till now. We see that the concept of monotheism is much more prevalent than it was in the ancient world. Because we see that there's something, the Judaism has a tremendous impact on humanity over the thousands of years since Sinai. So it's not like the ideas of Judaism are not having any effect. Ultimately, we expect more, we want more, we're hoping for more, we're working towards more, and we hope, Ki mitzion tetzei Torah udvar Hashem Yerushalayim. That from Zion will go forth Torah, and the word of God will come from Jerusalem. We want to be exporters of this high level of connection to God, of living as a holy nation, as David was saying, that the entire nation can be holy. We can be holy even for a doctor and a lawyer and a garbage collector, and we have a government and a police. They can be holy too. Shalom. So this revelation at Sinai is sort of the giving of the message to the Jewish people that was chosen, sort of the beginning of the project on the national scale of what God decided to start with when He chose Avram and said Lech Lecha. Okay, so it's a little brief one way to approach the question of what was God doing here, giving only the Jewish people the Torah? It's a good question, but
It's more long.
it's a very big question. Yes. Good morning, Ariel.
Good morning.
How are you?
Good
Tov. Shalom Pinchas. Manishma. You have the books with us. We're learning about Shavuot. We just learned a few Midrashim, how all the souls of the converts were at Sinai. We learned the Midrash about somehow the Jews got cleansed from an earlier defilement at Sinai. And the key point the Rabbi Lamoud was bringing, that the holiday is called Atseret, gathering or stopping, because it represents stopping. Like when you stop up something in a vessel, it's a form of gathering, and we needed the unity, the Vayichan, right, as one person with one heart to receive the Torah. At least the Jewish people should be together to receive the Torah.
Also,
Okay, yeah.
if there's our Israel is a nation amongst a lot of other nations, you can see the difference, like compare and contrast between both. And if it was just the whole world, then it would be kind of like less effective.
Aha, yefeh.
Yeah.
Yefeh, I like that. Sometimes seeing the difference is one way to educate. Good, I like it. What else did I want to say to you before? There's a book written by Rabbi Aryeh Kaplan. It's a lovely, it's sort of a booklet. It's a small essay. It's called "If You Were God." It's a cute. idea.
I think we did it.
I hope so. I hope so.
I saw the title somewhere.
It's a great little essay where he describes that on the one hand, God, you're God, and you have this island of primitives, and you want to educate them. But if you just show up and reveal yourself to them, then they'll turn into, like, they'll be so overwhelmed that they'll be like robots. Of course, they'll do whatever the God says, but they won't have any sense of self. They won't have any sense of development. And so you can't just, overwhelm these primitives. And the way he describes it there, if I remember correctly, is if you were God, what you would do is you would create some secret agents, infiltrators onto the island, who you would be giving a message and a mission. That they will sort of create a special group within the island, which you would and God has contact with that special group within the island, and ultimately this group would be able to teach the other natives slowly but surely, showing them that we see that they're okay. This group of people, they're like us, they're like the rest of the natives, but they have this special moral values, and they have this special plan and this mission, and this little small group will slowly but surely influence the rest of the islanders, the native islanders. So and he describes essentially that's what's going on at Har Sinai. He says that's why God created the Jewish people, and the messages to we're these agents, we're these secret agents in the world, the Jews, and but ultimately it's for the sake of God wanting to reveal Himself to the entire island, to all the primitives, but it's not possible. If God were just to reveal Himself to everybody, it would overwhelm them, and the primitive mind, the primitive mindset is not able to just in 1 second accept. As it is, the Jewish people had to have they had to be forced. They have to be threatened because it's such a big jump. What a big jump between a world without revelation and a world with revelation. World without God in it and a world where God actually speaks to man. It's a tremendous jump, and you can't. Sometimes you need to push ahead, right? Like, what do they say? Sometimes the best way to teach a kid to swim, throw him in the water. Yeah, you see the sink or swim, right? But then, of course, you're there, and hopefully you support him so he doesn't sink. But he learns how to swim. The Jewish people had to be thrown into a new world of having a Torah, having a Torah in the world. This is a whole other stage of humanity, of civilization. And we had to be. I think that's why the Midrash was talking about force. There's a few explanations about why this idea that there was a threat in order for it to happen.
Think about that Mitzrayim.
Yeah.
God showed Himself for the entire world.
It's true, but the difference, of course, is I guess that the message. There's no messages. Sure. At least in Egypt, I don't know if the entire world, but in Egypt they saw the plagues.
Let's say that it's like God attacking in the same time United States and China. It's
Right. It could be that there was the Hittite Empire at the same time, and God didn't attack them. He attacked Egypt because He was taking the Jewish people out of Egypt. I don't know if it was the entire world. There's a tradition that the flood was everywhere because that was all of humanity. But by Egypt, it was just Egypt that got punished because God was taking the Jewish people from being enslaved there. But I don't think all of the empires were attacked at the same time. So sure, there was definitely a revelation. But it's all connected. The revelation at Sinai, you could say, is an extension of those 10 plagues in Egypt, and the Jewish people being chosen and taken out of Egypt is part of the major revelation of God to this Jewish people. This is something which is not so natural to the world. They couldn't grow into it naturally, and so be some element of like pushing you ahead. Sometimes but going back to the example in the gym, you don't think you can do the 100 pounds. You don't think you can do it until, the coach, the trainer helps you. Helps you, holds you a little bit, and then without looking, he takes away his hands, and actually you're holding it. Sort of has to be teaching you how that you can actually handle this. But what does the tradition tell us? That we're going to get 10 commandments? What happens? There's a machloket. How many commandments did the Jewish people hear?
2.
That's right. Some people say they heard all 10. Some people say they heard only 2. The Torah relates that after hearing some of the revelation at Sinai, the people came and complained to Moshe and says, we're going to die. We can't take it. We can't take it. It's overwhelming, right? It's like, when you put in too much electricity into a circuit, it busts, right? So the Jewish people says, we're going to die. We can't handle this high voltage. And so God says to Moshe, okay, they're right. So he stopped the revelation, either after 10 or after 2, whichever opinion you want to go with. And the rest of the Torah, God gave to Moshe. And Moshe then related to the Jewish people over these 40 years, okay?
Back when they were, I think this is Midrash, where it was in the desert. It might have been like in front, around Mount Sinai, but they would make graves for themselves and they'd sleep there. And whoever died, they would be already buried.
Right, this is about after the sin of the spies. Then they had to sort of live out the rest of the 40 years in the desert until they all died out. There's a Midrash that every Tisha B'Av that they would all lie down and dig a grave and lie it down, and some of them would die. It's like a wild Midrash. Imagine, amazing. It's wild to go through life expecting to die every year, not knowing when you're going to die, and every Tisha B'Av sort of digging your own grave. That's a powerful experience.
Yeah.
It's almost abusive to dig your own grave and lie in it. If you're really scared to death, you could just die from being afraid, lying in your grave. That's pretty powerful. Wow. Recognize that God gives life and He gives death. After class today, I'm going to the Beit Din, the rabbinical court. You know that about 3 months ago, my sister died, and you have to go through the court system in order to get whatever estate she had. And so we chose, in Israel you have a choice. If all the parties agree, in my family we're all religious, we all agreed to go to the Beit Din Rabbani, not to the secular courts, but to go to the rabbinic courts. So I'm touching death today a little bit. It's something that you have to do after death. Pick up the pieces and move on. But the Torah is filled with laws about life, fills with laws about death, no less. Right? The laws of inheritance, Yerusha, are quite extensive. Of course, nowadays they're a little problematic because there's the government's laws of inheritance are not the same as the Torah's laws of inheritance. But we try to make them work together as much as possible. But anyways, back to the land of the living. Okay, Hirsch, will you read for us, please? Page 228. The paragraph in the middle of the page that starts off with the word the Torah itself.
The Torah itself refers to the day of Machon Torah as Yom HaKahal, the day of assembly, meaning the time the whole community gathered together as we read the exact words that the Lord had addressed to you at the fire on the day of the assembly, Devarim 19c. What does Ibid?
Ibid means above. So in other words, the same. So Devarim, they don't have to write Devarim twice. You just write Devarim Ibid instead of
And for actually, the name Shavuot has something in common with the meaning of Atseret, because they indicate summing up and pulling together all the spiritual achievements reached while counting 7 weeks. Since the Omer counting begins on Pesach, Shavuot turns out to be the final
finale.
finale, and conclusion of the process that begins with Pesach. So we see that the sages did not change anything by calling Shavuot Atseret, as Shavuot is indeed a festival of gathering and summing up. The Torah's preference for the name Shavuot and emphasizes the preparations of the Jews underwent before Matan Torah. In contrast, sages' preference for the name Atseret emphasizes the Jews gathering together to absorb the divine overflow that God grants us at the conclusion of the Omer period.
The way
Overflow of like energy, light, overflow.
Yes, all of the above. Of Kedusha, that's right, of holiness that Hashem gives us. So you understand the question that Rav Melamed is answering here. What question is he answering? If you look at our prayers, what do we call the festival this coming week, coming up? We don't call it Shavuot. When you open up the Siddur, everybody grab a Siddur, look in the Yalev Yavo. There's a blue Siddur right in front of you. Pass me one, please. Open up to the Yalev Yavo on page. Turn to the Shmona Esrei, the Amidah for Shalosh Regalim, page 800. And, turn to the Kiddush. Start with the Kiddush. 820. So the Kiddush, of course, is Borei Pri Hagafen, and then it says, "Blessed are you, Lord our God, King of the universe, who has chosen us among the peoples, raised us above all tongues," as I was explaining to Renan just before, right? "And made us holy through His commandments, given us, Lord our God, in love, festivals for rejoicing, holy days, and seasons of joy. This day of the festival of Shavuot, Zman Matan Torateinu." So that, it says Shavuot, but if you turn the page, just a few more pages to page 837 in the Amidah. Once again, we have a prayer where you have the different festivals. Pesach, you say Chag HaMatzot. Shavuot, you say Chag HaShavuot Hazeh, Zman Matan Torateinu. And the question is, if the Torah calls the festival Shavuot, why do the rabbis call it Atseret? How can they change the name of the festival? The Torah doesn't call it Atseret, the Torah calls it Shavuot. But throughout rabbinic literature, it's called Atseret. And his answer is that they're two sides of the same coin. Right? You saw in the last paragraph that Hirsch just read for us that they're two sides of the same coin. The Shavuot represents perhaps the preparation, the weeks of preparation, of gathering and summing up all those 7 weeks of self-development, of spiritual growth of the Jewish people coming out of Egypt and growing 7 times 7. And Atseret is the summing up. Maybe some people liken that, it's like you're filling up. Fill this up with water, glug, 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 7 weeks, and then at the end you put on the stopper. The stopper, what does it do? It stops up so that when you turn it over, nothing comes out. It stays inside. The Atseret is what holds it all inside us. All that growth, all that spiritual development, all those experiences. What experiences did we have? Can you remember all the festivals we just had during the course of the 7 weeks? What did we have? Let's do a short summary. It started off with Pesach. What else did we have? And then we had Chol HaMoed during Pesach. Chag HaMatzot, that was, 7 days. Yeah. What else? The man started during this year, but what did we have this year in our lives? What did we have? Over the last 7 weeks, we had so many. Yom Yerushalayim we just had now. That was a powerful experience. What did we have before that? Before that, Yom HaZikaron. What else? Pesach Sheni. Yom Ha'atzmaut. Yom HaShoah. What else did we have? two Rosh Chodeshes at least. Today is Rosh Chodesh. And many Shabbats. What else did we have? You're forgetting Lag BaOmer. Lag BaOmer. So many events during this period between Pesach and Shavuot. Atseret is the stopper. Gathers them all together. All this week's worth of celebration, of growth, of study. And what did we have 2 weeks ago? We had a nice study session, gathering all of the English department together. Tomorrow is Wednesday. We're having another one. A different place, different location. Wow. It's in the old Beit Midrash, where we're all going to learn together. All the different English department groups. Bechavruta at 11 a.m. Until 12, and then Rabbi Gun, until Rabbi Gun's class. Yeah, till Rabbi Gun's class, yeah. 11 till 12 approximately, yeah. So many experiences. Atseret is stopping that all up, and so it's two sides of the same coin. When the rabbi said Atseret instead of Shavuot, they weren't really, it's totally saying a new idea. It's just sort of looking at it from the other point. The rabbis wanted to say, don't just let that come and go. Don't let those experiences that came, let them stay inside you and bring them with you for the entire summer process, right? There's going to be no rains during the summer, so you hope you gather up your water during the rainy season, and you'll have enough water to take you throughout the summer. Yeah.
It looks like it's a boost to hold on, like all this time without anything. It's like we don't have like.
That's right. It's like saving up for the winter. So here it's saving up for the summer.
So,
right. Yeah,
and then saving up for the winter, it's Shavuot.
It's Sukkot, exactly. Right. That we have Shmini Atzeret then. Right at the end of Sukkot, after the end of Rosh Hashanah, and Yom Kippur, and 7 days of Sukkot. There's a final day there. Also, that on the 8th day, Shmini Atzeret. Also, gather up all those experiences and keep them inside, so that you have for the rest of the winter. Here we have
the Torah. When we finish the reading.
That's right, Simchat Torah. We finished the entire completion of the cycle of Parashat HaShavua. It ends on Shmini Atzeret. That's right. Good. Very good. Very good. All right. Okay, Renan, you take over. Page 229, number 7.
Extra joy, spiritual and physical. The joy on Shavuot is intense and unique. Therefore, as we saw above, even Rabbi Eliezer concedes that on Shavuot one must have a festive meal. That is the day on which the Torah was given.
So, but we didn't actually read chapter 1, so I'll just fill in for you. There's an argument that this entire book is about the festivals. We skipped to the last chapter because it's about Shavuot. But in the first chapter, there's a topic about how do we celebrate festivals. There's a machloket. Some people say, festival? You should be eating and drinking all day long. Party on, man. And Rabbi, this was. Take a look on page 1. Sections. It's on page. Page 11. Okay, chapter 1, page 11. When it comes to the purpose of a holiday, there are 2 verses which seem to contradict each other. One verse tells us the holiday is for God. You shall hold a joyous gathering for the Lord your God. Atseret, Lashem Elokecha, it's called Atseret. While the other says that it is for you. On the 8th day you should hold a joyous gathering for yourselves. Atseret tiyeh lachem. Gemara presents 2 ways to reconcile the verses. According to Rabbi Yeshua, the Torah is telling us that we should split up the holiday. So half is for God and half is for you, meaning half the day is spent on food and drink, and half is spent learning Torah in the Beit Midrash. In Rabbi Eliezer's opinion, a person may choose either the whole day is for God, spent in the Beit Midrash, or the whole day is for you, spent eating. Okay? Even if one chooses Rabbi Eliezer and spend all day learning Torah, he must still eat something so that he will not suffer from hunger. This is every holiday, and of course the practice follows, as you can see at the bottom of the page. The halacha follows Rabbi Yeshua. We split up the day, half on spiritual things and half eating and drinking. Okay? Some people say there's different calculations. Getting back to Shavuot, back to page 229. Everybody with me now? Back to page 229. Even Rabbi Eliezer concedes that on Shavuot, out of all the festivals, you have to have a meal. You can't, even if you want to spend the whole day in the Beit Midrash learning, you're not allowed to. Surprising. Because Shavuot is the day of receiving the Torah. You think of all the festivals, this is one that should be more spiritual. No. That's correct. That's correct. You're not allowed to fast. That's right. The day the Torah was given must be celebrated with food and drink, with cheesecake. No, it doesn't have to be cheesecake. But you have to celebrate Shavuot with food. Let's see Rav Melamed explain why. Go ahead. Who's reading? Renan? Yeah.
Despite the fact that when it comes to other festivals, he's of the opinion that people who are capable of dedicating the day to studying Torah should do so. Eat something honest so that they will not suffer. Safin 68b. Since the Torah's purpose is to perfect the physical world as well as the spiritual world. The joy with which we celebrate receiving the Torah must manifest itself not only spiritual but also physical, through eating and drink. When improving the world includes both body and soul, it shows that nothing is cut off or removed from God. There are There are deep insights that are hidden within the sensate body, and that can be understood only when the body and soul
coalesce, mean come together, join together, yeah.
Therefore, through
closeness
with God involve both body and soul. Similar in the future, when they are resurrected, the soul will once again be embodied, so that its divinity will be fully revealed at all levels.
Wow, okay, so this is a little bit heavy Kabbalah here, some mystical approach to Judaism, but what he's trying to say is a very, very basic concept of Judaism, that we are holy people. When we want to be holy, we don't go off onto a mountaintop and fast and separate from the world, separate from our wives, separate from food and drink, and consider that's the whole way to achieve holiness. Holiness is expressed best within the physical world, when the physical and the spiritual join together. And that's why, surprisingly, the festival of receiving the Torah must have a physical part of the day. It must have a physical component, because that's the ideal level of spirituality in Judaism, when the material world is not just an impediment, something stopping you from being more spiritual. It itself can be an expression of the spiritual world. It helps. Now here that comes into, you might have wondered this before, heaven, hell, future days, resurrection of the dead, what's going to happen? We talked about it briefly in the past, but there seems to be, even within Judaism, a few approaches. But the majority opinion seems to say, what's going to happen in the end? What's the end game? Everybody's going to be much more spiritual, everybody's going to be much more holy, right?
The dead will come back up.
So why have the dead come back? Why doesn't the world just exist of souls? So he says here that that's a higher level. When the soul gets a body once again, and that body can express that spiritual life, that's a higher level than just being purely soul. And so this is explaining why even Rabbi Eliezer agrees that the festival of Shavuot, even though there may be different ways of celebrating a festival for God, this Shavuot festival must be also physical, not only spiritual. Yes?
So when the dead will be resurrected, will they have a refurbished version of the bodies they had in life? Will they
I assume it'll be, if you died with only one leg, you'll come back with two. We assume that you'll
Will you
have.
have same face, same features? Will you look a different person?
Don't know. We don't know that level of detail. We don't know that. Not in detail, no. No, I don't. No, I don't know that. What book is that from? Some Eastern.
No, but our body, I think, should not be the same because we need to hold the kedusha.
Right, so it has to be a higher level of a body, a more refined, still material, but a more refined type of material. It's like they have, they're discovering all these new synthetic materials all the time. Right? What do they have now? I remember they discovered a new form of aluminum, which is strong but light, right? So that it can be used in the spaceships and all sorts of different uses of different tools. The concept is that Hashem will create the appropriate body for us whenever we reach that level. And who knows what it'll be like.
Captain America.
Who knows? Yeah. Okay, go ahead, Renan. Similarly,
the Gemara tells a story about a pious person who fasted every day but three. Shabbat Purim and the day before Yom Kippur.
Wow. What does that mean? Can you imagine that? He fasted every day. Obviously, he ate at nighttime or something. But fasting, this was his mode. This was his mode of worship. And it was much more common than it is nowadays, but still some people are very into fasting. It's a unique style, but he said, that's my style, and if that was good for him, he's not violating any prohibition, except for 3 days. 3 days. The day before Yom Kippur, because we learn out from the verses that Yom Kippur you have to fast. The day before Yom Kippur you have to eat. Okay, so you have to eat on the day before Yom Kippur. Purim, we're celebrating. You have to eat. It's a mitzvah to have a Suda. And Shavuot.
I have a question.
Yeah, please.
How did he sort of fulfill then the mitzvah of eating the matzah and the Pesach?
So the truth is, what does he mean he fasted every day? He probably means he ate at night. He had to eat. He would die if you don't eat. So I don't know, but it's a good question what he did on Shabbat. Maybe Shabbats are not included, but Shabbat he could eat the eve of Shabbat, but you're supposed to have 3 meals during the daytime. I don't know. So I don't know. Okay. I don't know. But anyways, that was his. What the point of this story is to show us that out of all of the days of the year, it's important. It's a mitzvah to eat on Shavuot. Okay, go ahead.
It continues that the Rabbi Yosef instructed his household to prepare particular choice meal for Shavuot, explaining that he was able to reach his remarkable spiritual level only in the matter of the Torah. Therefore, it was appropriate for him to be specifically happy on Shavuot.
As a matter of fact, there's another way of saying that is Rav Yosef remarked that he said, I'm so happy on the day of Shavuot because we received the Torah, because if not for the Torah, Kama Yosef Ika Bashuka. How many Yosefs there are in the marketplace? What gives me my unique talent, my unique character? Rabbi Yosef is a rabbi. This is what helps me stand out. This is my calling card. This is my career. This is my life. Torah. Without Torah, I'd be nothing. I'd just be another Joe Schmo. That's what he's trying to say. And so, who should celebrate more on Shavuot, the receiving of the Torah, than me? I'm the one who really, I'm happy that there is the Torah because that gives me my entire identity. And you take that to the larger scope of the Jewish people. Of course, you understand why we have to celebrate receiving the Torah on Shavuot. Yeah, go ahead.
Accordingly, we must make extra efforts to maximize our enjoyment of Shavuot.
Hope they have good food in the yeshiva.
As Torah perfects even the physical aspect of life. The special Shavuot offering, the Shtei Halechem, which was made from Hametz, alludes to this idea. As we know, Hametz alludes to arrogance and the evil impulse. The Torah is a remedy for the evil impulse, and so we symbolically sacrifice it on Shavuot. Our search became that Torah is a elixir of life. Well,
Elixir.
Elixir.
It's like a syrup or a drink that you drink and you get life from it.
Well, the Los Boston also.
Right. Same idea. Right.
Seems like a very, forget the word.
I don't know, magic. I don't know.
Before chemistry was alchemy.
Alchemy. Yeah. It's a metaphor.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
That's to transform every potential threat into something positive. Thus, the Gemara described God as saying to the Jews, "My children, I create the evil inclination and I create the Torah as an antidote. Thankfully, if you occupy yourselves with Torah, you will escape the clutches of the evil inclination." The use of the word tabling, which literally means spies, teaches that the Torah does not negate the evil inclination, but seasons it, sublimating it into something positive.
So you understand? What does that mean? It means that sometimes you eat a food and it tastes horrible. You have rice, unbelievable, in the kitchen and it doesn't taste good. You add salt, this is delicious. All it needed was a little bit of seasoning, a little bit of a spice to it. That's why the Torah is compared to a spice. It's not like the Torah comes and says, don't live your life. We're humans. We have a human life. What should we be, Torah as opposed to life? No. The Torah comes and seasons life. It enables you to use all of the tastes and the elements that exist in our world and use it in holiness, use it for good, make them tasty, both physically and spiritually. And so this is the Torah is a tavlin, a spice, which helps you avoid the evil inclination. Okay, go ahead. Custom.
The custom on Shavuot of eating dairy and honey, in addition to the other more usual Yom Tov, can be interpreted similarly. This food, which originates in something impure, as explained below in the section 40, are transformed into something pure and tasty. In this, they express the special purposes of the truth. Amazing, very interesting. Section 14, they talk more about the honey, the dairy foods and honey. So we'll leave that for section 14, but we'll get there. Let's. But the point is that you take something which is not naturally kosher, not naturally good by itself, but it can be transformed into something good. This is the special property of Torah that helps us transform the mundane world into something holy. Okay? So far so good? Now we're ready for, are you ready for Motzei Shabbat? What's happening this Motzei Shabbat? Shavuot night of learning. The truth is for yeshiva guys, it's no big deal. You study Torah all day, every day. And sometimes you're up late anyways. Some of you are up all night. I don't know what you're doing, but in the Beit Midrash, of course, 100%. Soaking in the Torah, drinking up the Torah. No other kind of drink. L'chaim. The elixir of life.
Could you consider just being outside, walking, drinking a coffee, talking to people, consider living the Torah?
No.
But
I mean,
why?
it's all relative. It's all relative.
Okay, but you're
You can talk to a book.
Of course, it's important to have relationships with your friends, and of course, it's important to be in the land of Israel. It's of course important to appreciate nature. All those things are good, but when you should be learning, you should be learning. When you should be talking and enjoying nature, you should be enjoying nature. But when you're doing one at the expense of the other at the wrong time, so that's wrong. That's a waste, and that's called bitul Torah. In between classes, go ahead and have yeah. In between classes, you can take a breath of fresh air, take a walk, but it shouldn't replace Torah learning.
Isn't that Midrash that says that looking at tree finding difference is part of the new Torah?
So there's a beautiful Midrash that Hirsch is quoting, and many times people say, the Midrash says as follows: if you're studying Torah and you stop to remark, wow, that's such a beautiful tree, or that's a beautiful view, you're guilty of sinning so much that you deserve death.
Wow.
What does this mean? What's wrong with looking out the window and seeing a beautiful tree or a beautiful view? So some people say, well, you're just interrupting from Torah study. You shouldn't be interrupting at all. And you're really showing disrespect to the Torah, and you're saying, wow, you're being filled with amazement and wonder at the natural world, when you should be filled with amazement and wonder at the revelation of the Torah from God. That's one interpretation.
We have a bracha for us.
That's right.
No short answers again. Second part.
That's it. That's right. Hirsch got it. I'm building up. To what is oftentimes explained by the Hasidic masters, and I relate very much. And he says that's the standard interpretation. That you should be studying Torah and not, looking at the view and looking at the trees, and Second interpretation says as follows: you're missing out one word. What did the phrase say? It says if you're studying Torah and you take a break from your studies and you say, I'm looking at the tree or I'm looking at the view, you know where the problem is? If you consider it to be a break. Actually, appreciating God through nature can be an extension of your Torah study. You can appreciate Hashem through the revelation, through the Torah, but also through the revelation nature. And so the sin here, the grave sin, is not so much that you're moving from one type of activity to another activity. The point is that you see it as an opposite. The point is that maybe that's the sin, is that you don't recognize that also the revelation through the natural world is an extension of godliness in this world, and that godliness can be expressed in the nature. And you're saying there's two separate things. There's the Torah, and then there's the natural world, and they're not connected. You make a break. That's the essence of the sin here. The sin that's so grave that says not worthy for you to die. So, yeah. For sure. Yes.
So you said that Shavuot, the day before Yom Kippur, Purim, what was the fourth?
That was it. There was only 3. That's what the Midrash said. That's what the Gemara said. He quoted it from.
So both the Torah and the Rabbanan, the mitzvah to eat on this day.
That's correct. That's right. Purim, of course, is the Rabbanan. Even the day before Yom Kippur, I don't think it has the status of a biblical obligation. But Shavuot seems to be, according to everybody, biblical obligation to eat on that day. Okay? Ready for learning? All night long? No, David's not into it. He's going to take a nap.
I'm learning all day long.
Okay. Page 230. Okay. Shavuot night learning.
Can I read? Where
Please.
Many joyfully study Torah all night long on Shavuot. The reason for this custom is explained in the Zohar. The early pious ones did not sleep that night, but busied themselves with Torah. Thus, when the rabbis gathered at the home of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai on Shavuot night, he said, "Let us fix the bride's jewelry, so that tomorrow she will be properly adorned before the king. Fortunate is the lot of the learned when the king asked the queen, "Who fixed your jewelry and burnished your crown?" There is no one in the world who knows how to fix the bride's jewelry other than the scholars. Fortunate is their lot in this world and the next.
Okay, what's this jewelry for the queen? What are we talking about?
Torah knowledge.
But the queen is the Torah, right? And the jewelry is the explanations of the sages, the rabbis, the explanations we give here. They're all like jewels on crowns on top of the Torah. So it's the Torah that gets adorned, that gets more beautiful by study. And so we have to study the Torah on the night before. The night before what? The bride goes before her groom, the king, and the queen are united. When? We described it yesterday. We said it's like a chuppah, right? Receiving the Torah on the day of Shavuot. We reenact the receiving of the Torah. It's like a marriage. And how do we have to make the bride ready? You have to adorn her with jewelry. That's the Zohar who explains this custom to stay up all night learning, so that we are adorning the queen for the wedding. Okay, go ahead.
Elsewhere, the Zohar recounts Rabbi Shimon and all the rabbis were joyfully studying Torah on Shavuot night. Each of them shared original insights, and Rabbi Shimon rejoiced along with them. Rabbi Shimon said to them, "My children, fortunate is your lot. Tomorrow the bride will enter the wedding
Canopy.
and only you,
Yeah.
and only you will accompany her. All those now preparing the bride to share her joy will be written in the book of remembrance. God will bless them with the 70 blessings and crown of the supernal wood."
Wow. So you've probably never heard this explanation before, because this comes from the Zohar. Usually we don't teach the beginners the Zohar right away. Melamed starts off. He's gonna get back to the usual explanation. What's the
40 and a riddle tonight.
Yeah, see that? I hope you should make sure after the class you go check that you didn't grow a tail. Okay? Make sure that the tail, and if it is growing, you make sure you're taking care of it well. No, I don't mean to make light of it. The opposite. The Zohar is very, very holy stuff, but it doesn't mean that you're not allowed to open up or hear a commentary or an idea expressed in the Zohar. Perhaps it's become a little bit more in fashion in recent years to explicitly talk about it. When I was studying in yeshiva, my Rosh Yeshiva would say to me, "It's written in the books, in the holy books." He wouldn't say it's written in the Zohar or the Ari or one of those things. He would just say, the holy books say. And so there's a little bit of an interesting development in the Torah world where we become a little more explicit about mentioning the Kabbalistic books and the studies. But it's definitely considered to be very valuable. And this is an interesting approach. Actually, how many pieces of jewelry does the bride have?
17.
Actually, where do you say 17?
No, it says
70 blessings.
No, the 70 blessings. But how many pieces of jewelry? It doesn't say it here. I'm telling you outside from other places in the Zohar, it's called 24. 24 pieces of jewelry on the queen. What do we learn? That's 24. Who remembers something? 24. What do we have? 24. Matnot Kahuna. Good. But what else?
2 times the 12 sons. There's one thing.
The 24 books of the Tanakh. Usually they describe as 24. 24 books of the Tanakh. Some people say, that's why some people stay up all night learning, specifically the entire Tanakh. Or, it's too much for one night, so they have a little bit from each book of the Tanakh. Because this is like adorning all the 24 pieces of jewelry for the bride, for the Torah. When we study a little bit from each one of the books. We'll see there's different customs about what exactly you learn. But conceptually, he's saying that according to the Zohar, there's tremendous blessing by preparing the bride for getting ready for the revelation of the Torah the reenactment of it, on the morning of Shavuot. Go ahead.
In order to understand the Zohar, we should clarify that the day of Matan Torah is referred to as the wedding day. It is then that God and the Jewish people form a special relationship, as do a bride and a groom when they get married. Each year on Shavuot, Matan Torah is revisited, and the Jewish people once again renew their relationship with God, as if they were bride and groom. According to the Kabbalists, studying Torah on Shavuot night prepares the Jewish people to receive the Torah in the most delightful way. When the morning arrives, they ascend toward God, deepening and intensifying their connection with Him. As a result, they merit an abundance of Torah, life, and blessing throughout the year. The Holy Arizal said that if one studies Torah all night long on Shavuot without sleeping at all, he is guaranteed to live out the year and is protected from harm all year long, for all of human life hinges on Torah.
That's an interesting, again, it's the type of a segula. Obviously, many people have passed away when they're old, even though they stayed up all night on Shavuot. I don't think this is. I don't think he's giving you a scientific. Yeah, it's a fair assumption. I don't think it's a scientific. He's saying that the idea is that what gives you life is Torah. Specifically, the night of Shavuot, learning Torah all night long is you're attaching yourself to life and what's life-giving, and that is going to stand you in good stead for the entire year. Yeah.
It's right in the Sefer in Yom Kippur.
Yeah.
It's enough, no?
Yeah, but why will God inscribe you for life on Yom Kippur? Because you stayed up all night on Shavuot. Maybe they're connected. Okay, this is an approach which you've never heard before. We've never heard this before with the Zohar, who says, right, he would stay up all night with his group, special group of Kabbalists, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, and they said that they're fixing the bride's jewelry for the wedding on the following morning. Okay? Now, David will read for us the more common explanation that you probably heard before, and this is also, you have to understand it as a metaphor and what it means. Go ahead.
Another explanation is offered for this custom. On the day when the Jews received the Torah, they overslept. Moshe, our teacher, had to wake them up to receive the Torah, as we read. Moshe led the people out of the camp toward God, and they took their places at the foot of the mountain. This was a failure on the part of the people. They neither prepared themselves properly for Matan Torah, nor experienced the appropriate anticipation. In order to make up for the sin, we study Torah all night on Shavuot, as we long for and anticipate the light of Matan Torah, which is revealed anew each year on Shavuot.
Wow, so you've heard this before, this idea?
Not
No, okay, well, the idea...
I've heard that
Moshe had to lead the people, because...
Moshe had to stop Hashem from, we're not ready, he said, Hashem, we're not ready to receive Torah now, and then he stopped Hashem basically, that's why we actually received Torah 51st.
That's he added a day, right? But this is in addition to that, the Midrash says that Moshe had to wake the people up. Can you imagine that? Does Rabbi Gon ever come by to the dorm room and knock on your door? He used to when he was younger, but now he's a little bit weaker. Yeah. Still, people do that.
Yeah.
Good. Sometimes you gotta pull them out of bed, and does that show respect for the Torah? Really? Is that the way it should be? You should be ready and prepared. If Ravid was here, you come 5 minutes early. You open up the classroom. You make sure that you're ready. If you care about the Torah and you're excited about it, you have to show that. Your anticipation, your excitement. And so this Midrash says that historically the Jewish people failed. And ever since, we, the descendants of the Jewish people, are trying to make up for it by staying up all night long and being ready for the Torah first thing in the morning, without any sleeping whatsoever. Nobody's going to have to wake us up. Well, the problem is you stay up all night. Sometimes you fall asleep. But the idea is that sometimes, more important than actually the meeting itself is the preparation. The preparation shows your attitude more than, right? Everybody can listen to the same lecture. Everybody can read the same book at the same time. How do you differentiate one from the other? It's by the preparation, the anticipation. That shows your attitude, more so than actually when you're in the event itself. And so we make an emphasis. This is the most commonly brought explanation. Not that we're adorning the Torah with jewels and we're achieving very high levels of adorning the Torah by sharing original insights. We're trying to make a corrective attitude, showing our attitude to the Torah, that we care, that we anticipate, that we long for it, and that we want the Torah that's revealed anew each year. Okay? Someone had a question? Yeah?
If I attempt
Yes.
and I fail,
Yes.
it's a good thing or it's a bad thing?
No, I think we're going to see how it translates into the real world. Let's read a little more because he talks about this. Okay. Go ahead, David. At first.
Yes. First, only the pious would stay up and study Torah all night. Around 400 years ago, thanks to our statement, the custom to stay up studying all night started to spread and became widely observed. The Kabbalists emphatically insisted that those who stay up all night must dedicate the time to intensify Torah study and not waste time on frivolous matters.
That's why I answered you so clearly, Ariel. Right?
Yeah.
He says, don't waste your time. If you're staying up all night, study Torah. Right? Your life depends on it. That's what the Arizal said. So it became a popular custom only in the last few hundred years. In Judaism, that's only, right? It's very big.
You ask in general or you ask to do it on Shavuot? No, really?
I don't know, Ariel, he's talking to you.
You ask like to drink a beer and talk to your friends in Shavuot or in general?
In general.
Okay.
Anyways, go ahead. In any case,
following this custom is not obligatory.
you hear it, Renan?
Mm-hmm.
If it is difficult for one to stay up all night studying Torah, he may go to sleep. Even some great rabbis prefer to sleep on Shavuot night. They evaluate the situation and decide that if they remain awake all night, the loss would outweigh the gain. They would not be able to focus properly on praying in the morning, and they would not be alert enough at night to learn productively, or they would need to catch up on their sleep later and on learn less Torah. Or they would not be able to enjoy the rest of the festival properly on account of exhaustion. On the other hand, those who do stay up all night feel that even if their Torah study is not of the highest caliber, and it is difficult to focus on the morning rest, this holy custom gives expression to love of God and love of Torah. It has the special advantage of showing dedication of God's glory. Such dedication enhances the glory of the Jewish people as well. Each person should choose the practice that will allow him to serve God best.
So what does he decide for you in the end, Reb Melamed?
Whatever you like to do.
He throws the ball back into your court, and he says, both approaches are valid. It's not a mitzvah d'oraita to stay up, but choose which you feel is best for you. I've done. What do I do? What do I do? I've done both. Many years, many, I'd say most years of my adult life, I stay up all night. But there are some years where I say, it's not, this year I'm just too tired, I'm not going to get anything out of it, and I have some guests to be with the following day, maybe I have small children to take care of, whatever it is. There are many considerations, as I said, and so you do the best, but at least once in your life, for sure, if not for a good few years of your life, I think it's a very valuable experience to stay up all night. Especially, we're going to talk about how to celebrate Shavuot in Yerushalayim. Very unique opportunities in Yerushalayim, but we'll talk about that, Be'ezrat Hashem, tomorrow. We'll talk about, there's a custom to go to the Kotel. Thousands of people stream to the Kotel in the middle of the night. The roads are filled with people walking in the middle of the street. Very similar to what you experience on Yerushalayim, but of course with no music and no dancing and that's much more. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, but that is interesting. That Ariel, your question is not a simple one, because what are you wasting? It could take you an hour to walk. Instead of walking for an hour to the kotel, you should be studying for an hour. That's 1 hour of Torah study time. It's not a simple matter how precisely to implement these ideas. But the ideas, are very important. And as I said, it can be a very powerful experience to stay up all night long. You force yourself. It shows your dedication. It shows your excitement. Even though, in the end of the day, the pure calculation of the value of Torah study could be you'll get more hours if you do it in the daytime. It could be you'll get more knowledge if you do the study in the daytime. But the experience of being up all night to get ready for the giving of the Torah in the morning, it's a very powerful one. I wouldn't give up on it totally. Total.
Just for the Torah. You're doing something.
That's right. So, but different. I say the answer is different for different people.
Right.
Different people are not used to staying up all night. Some people are used to staying up all night. Some people, any change in schedule is horrible for them. They really need their schedule.
Yeah.
Some people change the schedule. Wow, they come alive. Yeah, this is exciting. This is new. This is different. Right? So there's different people. There's different conditions, and there's different considerations. So there's no one answer that fits all. And also there's some years that you'll do this, and some years you'll do that. It doesn't have to be all or nothing. Yes, Hirsch. Last question for today, yeah.
It's not the right, but it's from Minhag.
Minhag.
From the Zohar, sorry.
Not only from the Zohar, there's another reason he brought from the Magen Avraham. It's a tradition about that we're making a rectification of the Jewish people not being up. Like Magen Avraham is a commentary on the Shulchan Aruch. Rabbi Avraham Danziger lived in Danzig, and he was a 16th century. Yeah, 17th century.
Danzig, it's not modern Poland, but back then it was German. Region.
We'll stop here for today. We'll continue Be'ezrat Hashem tomorrow. Okay. B'vakasha.